He said it to the mediator like I wasn't sitting 3 feet away. She's too broken to raise my kids. Not shouted, just tired and certain the way a man sounds when he's rehearsed a thing until it feels true. For a year, he'd told everyone the deployment came home wrong inside me. He was sure it would land. He had no idea what my battalion had already put on the calendar for that Friday. To explain how the two of us ended up in that beige little room with a box of tissues between us, I have to go back to the afternoon I walked through my own front door and felt the air change. But first, that room. My name is Dana Whitmore. Staff Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, 34 years old, 14 of them in uniform. My work, the work he called too much for me, is explosive ordnance disposal. I take apart the things that are built to kill everyone standing nearby. You do that by not rushing. You keep your hands slow and your breathing slower, and you trust the checklist over the fear in your chest. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Nobody has ever done my job well while panicking. So I didn't panic in that office. The mediator was a kind-looking woman with reading glasses on a chain and a legal pad she kept tilting away from me. My husband sat forward, elbows on his knees, doing the face. The brave, worried face of a man carrying a burden nobody appreciates. He talked about my sleep. He described a night I supposedly frightened the children, a night I still can't place because it didn't happen the way he told it. He used the word unstable twice, gently, like he hated to. I said almost nothing. That surprised him. He'd built the whole afternoon expecting me to come apart in front of the one person whose notes would decide who kept our kids. He wanted me loud. He wanted me exactly as unreliable as the story he'd been selling to his mother and our neighbors for a year. Instead, I folded my hands and let him talk, because I knew something he didn't. I knew what paperwork moves through a battalion in the spring, and I knew mine had already started. In 11 days, I was going to stand in dress blues on a parade deck at Camp Lejeune while a lieutenant colonel and a sergeant major said my name in front of a crowd. And I had a good idea what one of them meant to read out loud first. I didn't tell him. You don't announce the plan. You let the other person keep talking until they've said the thing they can't take back. He said it. Too broken to raise my kids. The mediator wrote it down. I thanked her for her time, picked up my cover, and drove home, down Route 17, with the windows down and the marsh smell coming in warm off the water. I should have noticed the porch light burning at noon the day I first came home. That was the tell. That was the first wire. I didn't. Not then. I came home in April, off a final workup and a last deployment, to a house on a quiet street outside Jacksonville, with a flag by the door and a porch light somebody had left burning in the middle of the day. The dogwoods were out. The whole street smelled like cut grass and charcoal. I noticed the light and didn't think about it, and that is a thing I've come to be ashamed of. In my work, you're trained to treat the small wrong detail as the whole story. A wire that shouldn't be there, a seam that doesn't match, the one object somebody moved. I can find those downrange in a second. It took me most of a year to find the one in my own living room. Let me tell you who came home, since my husband spent that year telling everyone the opposite. I am not fragile. I have knelt in the dirt over things built to end me and kept my hands steady through the whole procedure because the shaking is a luxury you take later, alone in the truck. I have made the call that saved a patrol and the call that cost me a friend, and I have carried both since. 14 years, 2 combat tours, a chest of ribbons I don't bring up at dinner. That is the woman he called, too confused to be trusted with a lunchbox. Here is what he got right. I did come home tired. Anyone would. I slept lightly the first weeks. Loud noises found the old wiring. Now and then I went quiet at the kitchen sink and lost a minute to somewhere far off. None of it was a secret, and none of it made me dangerous. It made me a person who'd been to war and come home to a dishwasher that needed loading. We are not broken. We are recalibrating. Marcus met me at the door with a hug that lasted a beat too long and a look I mistook for love. He asked how I was feeling in a voice pitched for an audience that wasn't in the room yet. I know that look better now. It was the look of a man taking inventory. The kids were the easy part. Emma, almost 6, wrapped herself around my leg and would not let go. Cole, 9, and trying to be a man about it, shook my hand and then broke and hugged me too. That night, I cut grilled cheese into triangles the way Emma likes, and for an hour, the war was a country I used to live in. Then the small wrong details started stacking up. Marcus began narrating me. Softly, always kindly, always where the children could hear. Mom's had a long day. Be gentle. Don't startle your mother. Mom gets a little mixed up now. That's okay. I hadn't been mixed up about anything. But a house is a room too. And he was moving one object at a time, and I was too glad to be home to read the seam. It was Emma who showed me. Weeks in, I asked her to grab her shoes so we could go, and she looked up at me with those enormous, careful eyes and said the thing that stopped my heart. Daddy says you get confused now, so I can help you remember. 5 years old. Repeating it word for word like a lesson. That was the wire. Once you find one wire, you stop trusting the room. You back off. You slow down. And you look for the rest of the device before you touch anything. So I stopped reacting to Marcus and started watching him. The first thing I noticed was money. We kept a joint savings account at the credit union on base, the one we'd built for the kids, and a someday house with a real yard. When I deployed, it held a little over $40,000. I pulled it up one morning on my phone while the coffee brewed. 11,000 and change. I checked it twice, because I'm trained not to trust the first read of anything. The money hadn't vanished. It had moved. A steady drip across the year I was gone, small transfers into an account with only his name on it, each one just under the amount that makes a bank ask questions. Slow as smooth. He'd learned my own trade and turned it on me. When I asked, he had an answer ready, warm and a little wounded. Repairs on the house, a loan to his brother, some bills I wouldn't remember because, well... He let the sentence hang there and looked at me with such patience that, for a second, I almost apologized. That was the design. Make me doubt my own arithmetic in the exact place I was strongest. Then the family started handling me like glass. His mother, who had never once warmed to me in 9 years, began calling twice a week in a soft new voice. How was I sleeping? Was I eating? Did I have someone to talk to? A neighbor I barely knew brought a casserole and held my hand too long at the door. At a cookout, I heard my sister-in-law say the phrase to another woman by the cooler, not knowing I stood right behind her. She hasn't been right since she got back. 4 words, and they'd been planted in every yard on the street. I want to be fair. There were nights the old wiring lit up, and I'd sit on the back step until it passed, and he'd been in the house for those. He knew what they were and what they weren't. And he had taken the smallest true thing about me and grown it into a crop the whole county could see. I didn't argue with any of them. You don't defuse a device by shouting at it. I wrote things down instead. Dates, amounts, who said what and where. A quiet little logbook in a notebook I kept in the glove box the way I'd keep a range card, because the arithmetic had told me something the casseroles were dancing around. A man doesn't move $40,000 and rehearse the neighbors for sympathy over a woman he only means to stay married to. He was building towards something. I just didn't have the shape of it yet. I found the shape on a Tuesday in the mailbox, between a power bill and a grocery flyer. A stiff white envelope. A law office up in Wilmington. My name on the front in a typeface that had never once been kind to anyone. I opened it at the kitchen table after the kids were down with a glass of water and the porch light off for once. It was a petition. Marcus was asking a court for primary physical custody of Emma and Cole, and for something the paperwork called sole legal decision-making, which is the polite way of saying he wanted the right to raise my children without ever asking me. Attached was a sworn statement, his. I went through it the way I go through a diagram of a device I've never seen before. Slowly, corner to corner, not letting my eyes jump to the part that scares me. There was the word, unstable. And around it a whole garden of others he'd been growing all year, erratic, unpredictable, a veteran struggling to reintegrate, unable to provide a safe and consistent home. He wrote that I'd frightened the children on a night he never named with any detail, because there was no detail, because it hadn't happened. He described my silences at the sink as episodes. He had taken every honest human thing about a person coming home from war and filed it as evidence. I sat there with my own name printed above the word unfit. And I understood that somewhere up in Wilmington, a stranger in a robe would take all of this in before ever meeting me. A first impression is its own kind of ambush. My hand stayed still. That's the training. The fear comes later. In the truck. But my mind was doing the thing it does, laying the pieces out on the mat. And the pattern that came together was uglier than any single line on the page. This wasn't a bad month. This was a year of work. The dated bank transfers, the neighbors coached into a chorus, his mother's soft phone calls, every one of them a witness being warmed up. There were even screenshots in the exhibits, texts of mine clipped to their cruelest half. He'd been collecting me like ammunition, one saved message at a time. He had started building the case before my boots ever left the ground. While I was gone doing the job, he was home, quietly assembling the story that I couldn't be trusted to come back to. He'd even chosen the ground. The mediator named in the filing wasn't neutral. She'd been recommended by his attorney, and the first session was already scheduled, set for a window when a Marine on a final workup would have the least time to prepare and the least sleep to spare. Then I found the date of the custody hearing. 3 weeks out. 21 days to answer a year-long ambush with my own children's beds hanging on the outcome in a room he'd built to make me look exactly the way he'd spent that year telling everyone I already was. Down the hall, Emma slept with her door cracked and the hallway light on, the way she's needed it since I got back. Cole still checked the locks before bed, 9 years old and standing his own watch. Those two were the whole argument. Those two were what he'd turned into a case number. I set the papers down, squared the edges, turned off the kitchen light. Slow is smooth, I told myself. Smooth is fast. I had 3 weeks. I meant to use every hour of them. The morning after that petition landed on my table, I did the hardest thing the training ever taught me. Nothing. I didn't confront him. I didn't call his mother. I didn't post a single word or beg a single neighbor to believe me. You don't tell the device you found it. The moment it knows you're there, it changes on you. As long as Marcus believed I was coming apart on schedule, he'd stay careless. And careless is the only gift an overconfident man ever gives you. So I went at the problem the way I'd work any other. What did I need? Where was it kept? How did I get it without tripping a wire? What I needed was the truth. And the good news about the truth is that the Marine Corps writes everything down. Every clearance, every evaluation, every award with the citations spelled out underneath. For 14 years, an institution had been quietly writing down exactly who I was, in language no family court could wave away. Marcus had a story. I had a file. I just had to pull it, and I had to do it without him noticing. The one person I told was Danny Ruiz. Sergeant Ruiz and I had been a team downrange. The kind of team where you learn a man's hands better than his face, because his hands are the last thing you see before you both walk towards something that could kill you. Danny was quiet funny in a flat way, and better with a laptop and a soldering iron than anyone in the shop. He also happened to be the one man in 3 counties who never once looked at me like I might break. I found him at the shop on a Thursday and told him the short version over burnt coffee in a foam cup. He didn't say he was sorry. He didn't do the face. He set down his cup and said, "Okay, what do you need pulled and who do we not tell?" That was the whole conversation. Sometimes loyalty is a speech. Sometimes it's a man asking what you need. We made a list. My complete medical file, my fitness reports front to back, the commendation from the last tour with its citation, and the one document that mattered most, the piece that turned his whole story to ash if a judge ever saw it. My fitness for duty medical clearance. Current. Signed by a Navy physician not 2 months back. The official, unarguable word from the United States government that Staff Sergeant Dana Whitmore was sound in body and mind and fully fit to serve. I'd saved a copy of it myself months earlier in a shared folder on the family drive, so I'd never lose it. I opened the folder to send it to Danny. The file was gone. Not misplaced. Not in the wrong subfolder. Gone, with a neat little stamp on the empty space telling me the exact day a document there had been deleted. And the day was one I recognized. It was 3 days after I'd told Marcus, calm as anything, that I meant to fight for my kids. Deleting a file feels like destroying it. It isn't. That's the mistake careless people make, and Marcus was careless, the way men get when they've decided the other person is too dim to matter. He'd reached into our shared folder and erased my clearance 3 days after I told him I'd fight. He thought that was the end of it. He thought a woman he'd spent a year calling confused wouldn't know that a deleted file is just a file with a sign on it that says, "Forget me." Danny knew better. I brought him the drive on a Saturday in the back of the shop, with the bay door half down and the smell of solvent in the air. He worked without talking the way he did everything that mattered. Plugged it in, ran something, watched a bar crawl across a black screen while I stood there and practiced breathing. It took most of an hour. Then the file came back. My fitness for duty clearance whole and unharmed, the Navy physician's signature right where it belonged. The plain government sentence that said I was sound and fit and cleared for full duty. There it was in government ink. Not confused, not erratic, not a danger to a soul. Sound in body and mind by the hand of a Navy doctor who had actually examined me, which was one more thing than my husband had ever bothered to do. A year of whispering answered in a single line no court could argue with. I let myself feel it for exactly 1 breath, because Danny was still frowning at the screen. "Dana," he said. It backed up more than the folder. Here's the thing about a family drive. It's greedy. Set it up once and it quietly swallows everything the household points at it, both phones included. Marcus had built ours years ago and forgotten what it ate. When Danny pulled my deleted clearance out of the dark, he dragged a whole drift of other cached things out with it. Photos, voice messages, little saved scraps of 2 lives, including one voice message Marcus had sent his brother a month before I ever came home. Danny looked at me. He didn't want to press play. I told him to. It was Marcus's voice, loose and easy, a ball game going somewhere behind him. He was laughing at the start. Then he wasn't. "Relax, she's not sick," he said. "She never was. But it doesn't matter what's true. It matters what's written down. I say confused enough times to the right people, I get it in a report. A judge reads the report. That's the whole game." I stood very still. I listened to it the way I listened to a readout. Flat. Taking the data before the feeling. My own husband's voice describing me like a mechanism he understood and meant to defeat. Somewhere in the back of the message, a screen door banged. "Ordinary man on an ordinary afternoon, planning to take my children with a lie he'd found convenient. The recording ran on. His voice dropped comfortable, sure of itself, a man explaining a plan to the only person he trusted. I just need her rattled a few more months. Keep her off balance, keep the family saying it, and by the time we get to mediation, she does the rest herself. Then those kids are mine, and the house, and I don't pay her a dime. A pause. Then the line I will hear in the quiet for the rest of my life. The one he said, easy as weather, never knowing a machine in his own house, was writing it down for me. She survived a war, man. She's not going to survive me. Here is what I wanted to do with that recording. I wanted to drive to his mother's house, hold up my phone, and play it in her doorway until the soft new voice she'd been using on me curdled in her throat. I didn't. You do not blow a device in place because it made you angry. You choose the moment. You choose the ground. A charge set off in a temper does damage you didn't plan for to people you didn't mean, and it tells everyone nearby exactly what you're carrying. If I played that message for Marcus now, I'd learn nothing and lose everything. He'd call it doctored. He'd say it was a joke, a stressed man venting to his brother taken out of context. Worse, he'd know I had it. And a man who knows what you're holding starts hiding the rest. So I put the recording somewhere safe, made 2 more copies, and told Danny to do the same. Then I did the hardest part of the whole thing. I waited, and I let it look like I was losing. The first mediation session was every bit the ambush he'd designed. The mediator had been steeped in his version for weeks before she ever met mine. She was polite to me the way you're polite to someone you've already decided about. She asked how I was sleeping. She asked gently whether the pressures of my service made a stable routine hard on the children. Every question was a small door held open for me to walk through and prove his point. I didn't walk through any of them. I gave short, even answers. Yes, I work. Yes, I deployed. No, my children have never once been unsafe in my care. Facts over feelings. I set them down like tools on a bench and left them there. It wasn't enough, and I knew it wouldn't be. When we left, her recommendation leaned his way. Reduce time for me until the hearing could sort it out. He walked to his truck, trying not to smile, and I stood in the parking lot in the heat and let him have the moment. Because I knew a thing about that Friday that he did not. 2 days earlier, the results had come down from the promotion board. I had been selected for Gunnery Sergeant. The Marine Corps had looked at the same 14 years my husband called a liability, and it had decided I was ready to take charge of more Marines, not fewer. The pinning ceremony was already on the calendar on base in front of the battalion, and the date they'd set by nothing but ordinary luck was that Friday. The same week as the hearing. A formal room, a lieutenant colonel and a sergeant major, witnesses in dress uniform, and my whole history spoken out loud for the room to hear. I finally had my ground. There was only one thing left to arrange, and Marcus arranged it for me without knowing. That night at dinner he was warm again, generous, the good husband, for the children's benefit. He said he'd heard about the ceremony. He said, of course, that he'd be there to support me in front of everyone. He wanted a photograph. The devoted husband standing proud beside his decorated wife, perfect for a mediator's file. I looked at the man across the table and I smiled, and I told him I'd like that. I let him think he'd get his photograph. Friday came up hot and bright. The kind of Carolina morning where the air is already thick by 8 and the flags hang heavy on their poles. I put on the dress blues, alone in the quiet, the way I like to do the things that matter. The dark coat, the red trim, the ribbons over the left breast, each one a small, flat story I don't tell at parties. White gloves, white cover. I pinned the collar and looked at myself in the mirror for a moment. And the woman looking back did not look confused or erratic or unfit to raise anyone. She looked like 14 years of showing up. The ceremony was in a hall on base. Folding chairs in neat rows, a flag on the stage, the smell of floor wax and coffee. Families fanned themselves with the printed programs. Somewhere a baby fussed. Marines I'd served with for years stood along the back wall with their covers under their arms. Marcus came in wearing a good shirt and the face. He had the kids scrubbed and pressed Emma in a yellow dress. Cole in a clip-on tie he kept tugging. And the second there were people to see it, my husband became the finest spouse in all of North Carolina. A hand at the small of my back. A murmured, "You look great, hun," loud enough to carry. He steered me toward another couple and told them how proud he was, how hard this had all been on the family, how much he'd had to hold together while I was away. I let him. Every word. I stood there and let him build the picture as tall as he wanted it, because I have learned that the higher a man stacks a lie in public, the farther it has to fall. What Marcus didn't know was that I'd already been to this hall once that week, on a Tuesday when it was empty. I'd come to see the sergeant major, and I brought a folder. Not to make a scene, not to beg. I laid out my clearance, my citation, and one recording, and I told him plainly what had been done to me and to my children. And I asked only that the truth go where the truth is supposed to go, up the chain, on the level. He listened without a word, the way old sergeants major do, and when I finished, he said just one thing. "Leave it with me, Gunny." He called me Gunny 2 days before the pin. That was how I knew he believed me. Now I stood at the front of that hall, with my children in the second row, and my husband beaming beside a stranger, and I kept my breathing slow. The room came to order. Somebody called attention to orders. The battalion commander walked to the center of the stage, a lieutenant colonel with gray at his temples and a chest of ribbons of his own, and he set a single sheet of paper on the lectern. He looked out at all of us. Then he looked for just a second at Marcus. "Before I pin this Marine," he said, "there's something I mean to read out loud, because it seems a few people here never once bothered to ask what she actually did." He lifted the sheet of paper, and the hall went still in the way only a room full of Marines can go still, which is all the way. The citation named a date and a place, in a country I'll leave unnamed here, on a night when a convoy full of young men was one wrong step from ending. It told how Staff Sergeant Whitmore had gone forward, alone, on foot, to a device built to kill everyone near it, and how she had knelt in the dark and taken it apart with her own hands so that 11 Marines behind her could go home to their families. It carried the word valor, which the Marine Corps does not spend lightly. It said she had done the work, calm and deliberate, and without being asked twice. Nobody fanned a program. Nobody's baby made a sound. I kept my eyes front and let the words go by like someone else's story, because that is the only way you can stand still while a room learns the thing you never say out loud. Then the colonel set the paper down, and he did not reach for the next one right away. He looked out at the crowd, and his voice changed quieter and somehow harder. "I don't usually stop to say the obvious," he said, "but it has come to my attention that some people decided this Marine came home less than she left. People who never asked. So let me be plain for anyone here who needs it. The Marine Corps has examined this Marine in body and in mind. We found her sound. We found her fit. And we are about to trust her with more Marines, not fewer. If you know her and you believed otherwise, that failing is not hers. It is yours." I did not look at Marcus. I didn't have to. I could feel it happen across the room, the way you feel pressure change before weather. He sat there while a lieutenant colonel told the whole hall that the story he'd spent a year selling was a lie, and did it without once saying his name. His mother stared down at her lap. Behind me, a friend of mine let out a slow breath That sounded like the start of a laugh she was too disciplined to finish. What the colonel said out loud was the smallest part of it. 2 days before, quietly through my lawyer and up my chain, the recovered clearance had already gone where it needed to go. So had the recording, the one where my husband laid out his whole plan to his brother. The deleted file was now a matter for people who take a hard view of a man erasing a Marine's medical paperwork to win a custody case. I never played 1 second of it in that hall. I didn't need to. The truth was already moving through the proper channels, slow and smooth, exactly where it could do the most good and the least theater. Then they called my children up. Emma held one pin and Cole held the other, and with their small, careful hands they fixed the rank of Gunnery Sergeant to my collar, while the room stood and clapped. Emma whispered, "Did I do it right, Mommy?" I told her she did it perfect. I hugged them both, and I did not cry because I was saving that for the truck. Afterward, in the white heat off the asphalt, Marcus caught up to me. The face was gone. What was under it looked younger and much worse. He started to say my name. He started to say we should talk. My phone buzzed in my hand before he got the second word out. The screen lit up. It was the mediator. I answered on the second ring in the parking lot, with Marcus standing right there. It was a short call. The mediator's voice had changed. She'd seen my real clearance by then and learned how the copy in our house had come to be deleted. The questions she used to save for me, she had for him now. She asked if I could come in Monday. I said I could. I hung up and looked at the man who had built a whole year around the idea that no one would ever check. I didn't say a word to him. I got in the truck. And then finally alone with the doors shut, I let myself cry. Not for him. For the year it took to prove a thing I already knew. The hearing was almost quiet in the end. The truth does not need to raise its voice. My fitness for duty was a matter of official signature. The deleted file had become its own kind of evidence, the sort that makes a judge look at a man very differently. Marcus's story did not survive contact with the paperwork. I was granted the steady primary home for my children with a fair place kept for their father because they love him, and because a child is never a weapon, even when a parent tries to make one. I could have done more. I had the recording. I could have played it for his mother, ended him in this county for good. I didn't. Not because he deserved mercy. Because my children deserved a mother who chose the higher thing while they were watching. Revenge is loud, and it burns down the house you still have to go on living in. I had already won the only thing worth winning. There was no glory left to chase in his ruin. We are all right now. Cole stopped checking the locks by the fall. Emma sleeps with her door shut again, which is its own quiet victory. I turn the porch light off at night now because I finally understand what a light left burning in daylight was trying to warn me about, and I don't need the warning anymore. I train Marines. I raise my kids. On Sundays, I cut the grilled cheese into triangles the way Emma likes. And a life, it turns out, gets rebuilt the same way you take a thing apart. One careful piece at a time. Here is what that year taught me. Respect is earned, never assumed. And the people too lazy to ask what you've done will always underestimate what you can do. Let them. Keep your hands steady. Keep your paperwork honest. And when the moment finally comes, don't scream. Just set the truth on the table and step back. If you believe respect should be earned and not handed out on appearances, tell me in the comments. Was she right to let the truth do the talking instead of screaming back? Stay with me for the next one. A story about a promise made at a graveside and a family who thought no one would ever hold them to it. And keep your porch light off. You'll know why.